I manage a shipping depot in Hamburg. And last month, this American businessman walked in furious because our afternoon crew hadn't processed his container. He demanded to speak to whoever was slacking off, and when I explained the shift ended at 3 p.m. per union contract, he went pale. You're telling me they just leave? That's exactly why unions are corrupt. They protect lazy workers who abandon customers. I showed him the contract mandatory breaks, defined hours, overtime protocols. He stared at it like I'd handed him communist propaganda. In America, we work until the job's done. That's called integrity. Then he asked what time the evening shift started and looked genuinely betrayed when I said there wasn't. 1. My cousin works at a pharmacy in Lyon, where an American woman demanded antibiotics without a prescription, claiming she'd already wasted an hour finding the place. When he refused, she launched into how French unions had brainwashed healthcare workers into following pointless rules instead of helping people. She said American pharmacists would have just handed them over because they actually care about customers. He explained that dispensing prescription medication without authorization would cost him his license and possibly jail time. She rolled her eyes. That's what I mean. The unions have you so scared of doing your job that sick people suffer. She left muttering about socialist medicine and bought aspirin at the Tata next door. Then came back to ask why that didn't require a prescription. If pharmacies were so concerned about safety, I worked concert security in Melbourne and watched an American couple try to push past the barrier during a headliner set. When I stopped them, the husband got aggressive. We paid for VIP. You're just standing here doing nothing because your union says you don't have to actually work. I explained the barrier was for safety, crowd crush prevention, emergency access. His wife cut in Vegas, security actually helps customers instead of hiding behind union rules. They make sure paying guests get what they deserve. I asked if Vegas security let people into restricted zones during active performances. They're flexible. They understand customer service. They spent the rest of the show filming my negligence and yelling about filing complaints with someone who actually works for a living. Comedy never stops when Americans discover that worker protections aren't a glitch in the system, but the entire point. I teach at a technical college in Stuttgart and had an American guest lecturer who arrived 15 minutes before his scheduled slot, saw students in the room, and tried to kick them out. When I explained they were finishing the previous class, he said, "The room's booked for me now." Their teacher should have wrapped up on time instead of letting the union protect their inefficiency. Told him classes run exactly 50 minutes with a 10-minute transition. It's in every instructor's contract. He looked at his watch theatrically. And who enforces that? Let me guess. The union makes sure nobody works a second over because God forbid someone stays late to actually educate people. The previous instructor heard this, calmly packed up exactly at the 50-minute mark and left. The American stood there fuming. See, that's what I'm talking about. Zero dedication. I mentioned that staying late would violate the next instructor's contracted time and create a cascade of delays. He spent his entire lecture complaining about how European education was failing because teachers care more about clock watching than students.
Hi, brother-in-law.
Drives trams in Zurich and picked up an American tourist who'd been arguing with the ticket inspector. She cornered him at the next stop, insisting he override the fine because she'd honestly forgotten to validate. When he explained he couldn't waive penalties, that's the inspector's jurisdiction per union and company separation of duties, she lost it. This is insane. In Chicago, the driver would just say, "Don't worry about it," and move on. But here everyone's so obsessed with their union-protected little fiefdoms that common sense goes out the window. He suggested she pay the fine or contest it through proper channels. Proper channels. You mean more union bureaucracy designed to squeeze tourists? The driver should have the authority to make judgment calls. Posted a TripAdvisor review claiming Swiss public transport was a union racket where workers refuse to help because their contracts say they don't have to think. A site foreman in Copenhagen for a residential renovation and an American expat hiring us for his kitchen. Remodel kept texting the crew directly with change orders. When I told him all communications go through me, per our contract, he said I was creating union red tape to justify my position. Insisted that in Dallas, his contractor let him talk to whichever worker he needed because they actually wanted the job done right instead of protecting some union hierarchy. I explained it prevents miscommunication, unauthorized work, and safety violations. That's just an excuse. You're afraid the workers will tell me they could do this faster without you micromanaging. He started showing up at the site during work hours, trying to hand the electrician revised plans. The electrician refused them and called me. The American went on a 15-minute rant about how unions destroy accountability by not letting customers interact with the real workers. We finished the project exactly on schedule despite his interference. And he still left a review saying union rules had doubled the timeline. I run a legal aid clinic in Brussels, and an American woman came in demanding we take her case against her employer immediately. When I explained our intake process takes 2 weeks where small nonprofit and caseloads are assigned based on urgency and capacity, per our staff agreement, she interrupted. So your union makes you turn away people who need help? That's exactly the problem. In the States, a lawyer who wanted clients would see me today. I clarified we're not a law firm. We're a clinic with limited resources and structured protocols. Limited resources because everyone's working part-time hours protected by union contracts instead of putting in real effort. She demanded to know our weekly hours. I told her our caseworkers do 35 per their agreements. She laughed. 35. American public defenders work 60 and actually help people. But sure, enjoy your union coffee breaks while victims suffer. She filed a complaint with the city claiming we'd refused service due to union laziness and were violating her rights as a resident. My uncle owns a bakery in Lisbon and had an American family come in 10 minutes before closing, annoyed the display was half empty. The father asked why we weren't fully stocked for customers. And when my uncle explained we bake 2 daily estimates to minimize waste, he snorted. Let me guess. The union won't let you work past closing to bake more? In Pennsylvania, bakeries stay open late and bake fresh batches because they actually care about sales. My uncle pointed out we open at 6 a.m. and close at 7 p.m., 13-hour days. Yeah, but you're not baking the whole time, are you? The union probably has you taking 2-hour breaks. He bought the last 2 loaves, then asked why they weren't still warm. My uncle said they'd been baked at 5 p.m., 2 hours ago, normal for end-of-day inventory. See, that's the problem. American bakeries would have just made more. But unions killed your work ethic. He posted online that Portuguese bakeries deliberately understocked. Because unions encourage laziness, I wait tables in Stockholm at a bistro that closes the kitchen at 9 p.m. sharp. An American couple seated at 8:50 ordered appetizers, entrees, and dessert. When I explained the kitchen was closing and offered to rush their mains if they skipped starters, the woman said, "This is what's wrong with Europe. The union protects cooks who won't stay an extra 20 minutes to serve paying customers." I clarified the kitchen staff had started at noon and worked straight through 9 hours with breaks. Staying late violated their contracts and our scheduling. Her husband leaned in. In New York, chefs work until the last customer's happy. That's called professionalism. But here, the unions turned everyone into clock punchers. They ordered just entrees, ate quickly, and left a 1-star review, claiming the restaurant prioritized union rules over hospitality and that we'd kicked them out despite being seated before closing. A butcher in Krakow at a market stall and an American expat became a regular, who always complained we were closed Sundays. One Saturday, he tried to place a huge order for Sunday pickup, and when I said we're closed, he exploded. You're losing money because your union won't let you work Sundays? That's corruption. American butchers would kill for those sales. I explained Sunday. Closures are legally protected rest days for most retail. Protected by unions who'd rather see businesses fail than let people work. I'd pay double for Sunday service, but you'd rather lose my money than defy the union. He suggested I open under the table and give him a cash discount. I declined. He started buying from a big supermarket instead and told other expats our market was union-strangled and anti-commerce. 6 months later, the supermarket's butcher counter started closing. Sundays, due to new municipal enforcement, and he came back complaining about unions spreading like a virus. I manage a vineyard tasting room in Burgundy, and an American wine blogger showed up expecting a private tour, despite not booking. When I offered the next group tour in 90 minutes, said he didn't have time, and asked if he could tip someone to do it now. I explained our guide's work scheduled shifts nobody was available. So the union won't let anyone take initiative to earn extra money? That's insane. In Napa, guides compete for tips, and customers get immediate service. I mentioned our guides are salaried with benefits, not tip-dependent. Exactly. No incentive to go above and beyond. The unions made everyone complacent. He hung around anyway, trying to chat up a guide on break. She politely declined, saying she was off duty. He filmed her walking away and posted it captioned, "French wine culture killed by unions." Staff refused to work even when customers beg. His followers debated whether European unions were lazy or socialist, and several said they'd avoid France for wine tours now. I sell tickets at a train station in Oslo, and an American businessman missed his connection, demanding I put him on the next train for free since it's your fault for not holding it. I explained, trains don't wait for late passengers. It disrupts the entire schedule. That's union thinking. The conductor could have waited 2 minutes but didn't because the union says he can leave on time no matter what. In America, we solve problems instead of hiding behind rules. I offered him a ticket on the next departure in 40 minutes at standard price. You're really going to charge me again? The unions turned you into robots. A customer-focused company would have made an exception. He paid. Then spent the wait filming the departure board and narrating about how union-controlled transit systems punish passengers for being human. He asked another traveler if they thought unions had ruined European efficiency. The traveler said Norwegian trains are statistically more punctual than American ones. He replied, yeah, because they leave people. Behind my sister is an air traffic controller in Vienna and told me about an American pilot who filed a complaint after she denied his request to deviate from assigned altitude during approach. He claimed in his report that European controllers were overregulated by unions and refused to accommodate reasonable pilot requests that American controllers handled daily. She explained that altitude separation is non-negotiable. For safety, it's not a union issue, it's international aviation protocol. He doubled down in a follow-up, saying unions had created a culture of inflexibility, where controllers feared repercussions for using discretion. Her supervisor had to write a formal response citing ICAO regulations and explaining that the pilot's request would have violated separation minima with another aircraft. The pilot sent a final email claiming this proved his point about how European aviation prioritized bureaucratic compliance over operational efficiency. He's still flying the route, and she still denies unsafe requests. I work the front desk at a car rental in Athens, and an American couple tried to return their vehicle for hours late without calling ahead. When I explained they'd incur late fees, the husband said, "We were seeing the Parthenon. You're really going to charge us for experiencing Greek culture? The unions got you so scared of deviating from policy that you punish tourists for enjoying your own country." I showed him the contract he'd signed late. Returns cost us the next reservation and required staff overtime. Overtime? Let me guess, the union makes you pay triple for anyone who works past 5. In America, we just stay until the job's done because we're not nickel and diming customers. His wife added, "This is why Greece's economy struggles. Unions create all these rules that drive tourists away." I processed the fee. He asked to speak to a manager who wasn't union brainwashed. I called my manager, who upheld the charge. They left a review claiming Greek car rentals were a union scam targeting foreigners. A translator, working a municipal office in Tallinn, and an American resident came in, furious that we didn't have English language. Forms readily available. When I offered to translate verbally while she filled out the Estonian version, she said in a real customer service environment, you'd already have English forms. But the union probably fought against it because translating would mean extra work. I explained we provide translation services free of charge. That's literally my job. Yeah, verbally, which takes forever. If you actually cared about efficiency instead of job security, you'd maintain English templates. I mentioned Estonia's official language is Estonian, and most forms are legally required in Estonian first. That's just nationalist gatekeeping, protected by unions. America has Spanish forms everywhere because we're not afraid of serving diverse communities. She insisted on speaking only English throughout the process, then complained it took 40 minutes. I noted it would have taken 15 if she'd let me translate smoothly instead of arguing about union policy at each question. I supervise a recycling facility in Ghent, and an American visiting his daughter tried to tour the plant unannounced. When I explained we only do scheduled tours for safety and insurance reasons, he said it was typical union paranoia, worried someone might see workers not working. I offered to book him for the following week. By then I'm gone. But let me guess, the union won't let you make a one-time exception, even though it costs you nothing. I clarified that insurance liability and safety protocols aren't union inventions, they're legal requirements. He left saying European industry was strangled by unions protecting unnecessary jobs. Apparently convinced my position existed solely to deny him a tour. The pattern never changes. Americans encounter labor protections, assume they're corrupt inefficiencies, and somehow always conclude that the real problem is workers having rights instead of customers demanding special treatment. They genuinely believe unions exist to prevent work rather than ensure it's done safely, fairly, and sustainably. Every scheduled break is laziness. Every safety protocol is bureaucracy, and every contract is an excuse. They'll stand in a country with higher productivity, better work-life balance, and longer life expectancy. Then explain how everything would improve if only workers had less protection and employers had more control. It'd be funny if they weren't so confident they'd figured out what generations of European labor movements apparently missed.